So you've had a bit of time to play with the graphs, and hopefully you're kind of finding that more interesting than a simple keyboard input. Um, but now we're going to give you some way to interact with these graphs so you can actually start doing some cool programs. And of course, the more Java we learn, the cooler we can make our graphics and interactions. So we'll start a new program, and we'll make that, I'll just call it interaction. It doesn't, you can call it whatever you like. But what I'm going to do now, this is the last time I'll remind you, generally in the videos now I'll just start with a project so that I don't have to spend your time on this, is you're going to have to keep importing JGraphics, right? So make sure it's somewhere saved that's easy for you to access so that way it's quick to import. And now Java knows about it, and remember the other class that's helpful to work with is awt.color. Whoops, color. Okay. So now we're ready to start with a graphics program. And remember, the first thing that we usually want to work with is a graph. So I'll call it window, new graph. And let's just, we'll only change a couple things here. Let's call this mouse input. And I'll make it a little bigger than the standard. Let's make the width 600 and 400, well, something like that anyways. Okay. So the first thing then to learn about how to get mouse clicks from the window is you just have to know what method, you just have to ask. So if you didn't know anything else, you could ask the window and say, let's go fishing and see what you have. And down in here, it's generally a get method when you want something. That's kind of the convention that I've tried to use for you, and it's pretty standard in other programming libraries too. But here's one that says get mouse click, and it returns a JPoint. So we could actually look it up in our Java doc too. And the graph, if I want to see what is get mouse click, waits for the user to click on the screen and returns the coordinates of where it occurred. Perfect, that's exactly what I want. So that's what I'm going to set up here is I need a JPoint, and I'll call it click. And I'm asking the window to get it for me. Say, get me the mouse click. Now, once I've done that, I have this point, and I can use it to do something. So, you know, I could say something like, why don't we draw a circle with it? How about an oval? That's a little more interesting. Whoops. J oval, oval equals new J oval, and it's going to be at the click is where I want the center to be, and let's make it, let's go width 8 and height 4. And then we'll say window, draw this for me. Okay, so now when you run your program, nothing's there because it's actually sitting here waiting for me to click. So I'll click somewhere, and as soon as I click, that's where my oval is going to be drawn. So like here, boom, right in the center, that's where it was drawn because I know where the mouse was that they clicked, and that's what I've got. So that's one way you can get the user's input using a mouse click is just by calling this method. And remember, your program is halted, meaning nothing else is going to happen down here until that mouse click has been captured. So basically, it's waiting all through this code. Your program is stuck until they do that. So the flow isn't the same step by step by step. This is probably one of the first times you've seen that your program is going to freeze and wait because you've asked for it to do that. So now that we've got the now that you can see how to get a mouse click, why don't we play around with some of the more advanced things that we can do with a graph. One of them that you may want to do is actually work with an image. So it's possible to draw an image, and I'll bring up the class for you so you can see the documentation. It's the JImage class right here. And here's what I need to do in order to build it is I need the path, I need where I'm going to draw it, and its width and height. It works the same way as a rectangle. It'll always draw the picture as a rectangle. So you'll need to go top left corner, and then the width and the height, same way you do with a rectangle. Another thing here that you want to note in this documentation is you're going to get an error if you were to just use single backslashes, because remember, those are going to say escape characters. In order to actually get a backslash, you have to use 2. So let's go through the process together just so you can see. So let's go to Google, just go to the home, and I'm going to do an image search. So let's look for Superman. There's a cool picture of Superman, and I will just save this picture. And just put it somewhere where it's easy to refer to it. So sure, let's call it on the desktop. Okay. So now I've got the picture, and I'll go JImage. Superman is a new JImage. Notice that I am trying to use good names here in my program. If I just called it like JImage I, if you have a bunch of them, it's hard to tell which image is I because it's not very descriptive. But when I call it Superman, it's really easy for me to know, oh yeah, this is the picture of Superman that I'm working on. And computer code is hard enough to read as it is, so we do go to great lengths, and I do have that expectation that you'll use the proper style that we've been developing. And one of the styles is that you use proper variable names. Okay, so C colon, so it's maybe different on yours, and I believe it's going to be documents and settings cam desktop on my computer. And let me just look at what the picture was. Just call it superman.gif, and I need a width and a height. So let's say I want this picture to be drawn, and this isn't in pixels, by the way. This is in terms of the graph. So the graph is normally -10 to 10. So if I wanted to take up, the middle portion of the screen, then 5 and 5 would be its width and height. And of course, I need a location. So where do I want to draw it? So let's say J point image point is a new J point, and I'll say that it's put it here so it looks it'll be a nice spot for me to put it. It'll draw it nice and centered. Okay, and now I'm still getting this error here. So I told you about this earlier. It doesn't recognize the illegal escape character because it doesn't recognize the backslashes here. If I double them up, that's how you do a backslash, because remember, it's a special character. Now there's no problem. So that's one of the first places you're going to see that you need to use special characters is in your file to escape them. If you don't want to refer to this whole long mess of junk like that, what you can do is go up to your project and get the properties, and it'll tell you where that project is saved. If you save the image right there to that project folder on your computer, then you can simply refer to it by the file name. You don't need the full path, because Java will look in the current working directory, and this is where you'll find the current directory in your program. So if you stick it all in that spot, it's kind of nice too, because then it stays organized, because the picture you're using for that project is in that project. Otherwise, it's going to get cluttered as you have multiple projects on the go. Okay, so let's go and draw the picture now so you can see it. So I'll draw Superman. And it's not there because, remember, this program is the first one it expects me to click. So here's my oval, and there's Superman. Okay. So I drew him at -5, 5, and I gave him 5 for the width and 5 for the height. So I might want to, make this maybe 10, 10. It's all stuff you can play with when you're making your programs and pictures. There's Superman a little bigger, right? And eventually we're going to get to things like animating Superman, but to give you an idea of what it would look like, is I can move Superman, make him look like he's flying. Let's go. So if I want to move him, maybe I want him to fly. Let's move this point to 5, 5. 5. Let's go 5, -5. So he'll be down in the bottom corner here, and he's going to fly up like this. So I better make him smaller or he'll just fly right off the screen too quick. And let's say I'm going to move him over 1. And I don't know if you remember how to do this part, but now that I've moved him, I have to animate him to get the changes to show. Now, that's going to move him one to the, sorry, we should go one to the left and one up. So I can do this a couple of times and then it'll kind of look like he's flying up. Now there is a problem here. When I run it, you're not going to see the animation like we talked about. So here's my circle. There was no movement. It's kind of like what happened. Don't forget, you actually have to tell the graph to wait. The computer's so fast that this just went wham. Instantly it looked like Superman showed up here in your code. So now that I've drawn Superman, I have to say window.wait, and I'm going to ask it to wait. Why don't we just say like even half a second might be too slow here. Let's do a quarter second. So now every time I've got to make the animation happen, then wait, move them, animate it again, wait, whoops, wait, move them, animate them again, wait, move them, animate them again. So let's see, this time it should look like a proper animation. Okay. So if there was, it didn't look very smooth, and again, you know, we're just starting this, but it'll be better when we have better techniques. It would have been the computer lag that made it look that way. Obviously, it would have been an equal speeds here if it was no computer lag. So that's a little bit about images, and I'm going to expect that you can now use an image somewhere in your program. And there's other classes, though, that we're going to want to use, one of which is the JString class, which is how do you put a string or a message up on the screen. I'm just going to do this, gang. I'm going to get rid of that. There's no, you know, it's kind of annoying trying to teach you guys with that mouse click showing up. And I'm just going to draw Superman so we don't have to wait for the animation to happen that was there. That was just for fun. So the next class we're going to look at is a JString. And I'll call it message equals new JString. Now, where do you think I'm going to go to find out about how to build a JString? If you said documentation, bonus points for you. It's exactly how programmers do it. So if I wanted to know how to build a string, I give it a string and I have to give it a point. So what it'll do is it'll give me the message here, and this is where to draw the message. So if you want more info, click on it, and it says the location is the top left corner where it will be displayed. So the point is top left, the value is the text to display. Okay, so here we go. Let's say, please click on the screen. And I'll call this my message point. Oops, JA point. So what I'll do now is I'll define where I want to see that string. So let's say I'm going to put it at maybe in the top sort of left area of my screen. It's something you can move easily if you need to once you see the thing drawn, or again, as I've suggested, really it's very helpful to do this on graph paper first, because then you can draw it by hand and know where the things are going to show up and then stick those values in. I'm going to have to say it again and again, but I'm telling you, the planning will save you way more time. It's one of the worst things that students do when they start programming is they always jump right into their code and they just start programming. And that's fine, but know that I can promise you it'll almost always take you longer unless the task is ridiculously simple. If the task requires a little bit more thought and processing from you, the computer's the last place you want to go. In fact, in software development, that is exactly how it works. Nobody sits down to code until the very end of a project. All those video games you love and all that software you use, it was probably, if it took them a year to build, they probably only spent the last couple months actually coding it. They spent all that extra time engineering it in the beginning, designing it, figuring out how it was going to work, and then at the very end they did the programming. So anyway, know that that's pretty standard, that programming happens last, and you should consider that in your projects to help save you time, and it's a good habit. Okay, so now when we draw that message, oh, it didn't draw the message there, I actually drew the message point. I was talking too much. So this time if I want to draw the message, please click on the screen. Now you can have some fun with the message too. I mean, you go message dot, whoops, and you can see some of the methods here. You should start probably getting used to what it is that you need for without having to look too much at the documentation. You'll start to get the feel for what things are without having to go all the way to the internet and look it up. For example, these are my get methods if I want to know things about it, and these are my set methods if I want to change things about it. So, oh, here's a set color method. So cool. Why don't we try and change the color of the screen? You could probably predict that's what the method would do. So, let's do, how about we do green? I don't think we've done a green one yet on the screen. So 0, 0, 0, that's black. So let's go half. This will be a dark green. So please click on the screen. Okay. There's a lot of other things you can do too. For example, you're going to go down here and say font size. Okay, that's cool. I can change the font size. Let's make the font size 24. And just like when you're in Microsoft Word, now it's going to be pixel size 24. So you can change the size of your message too. There are some more advanced features that you can do with strings. I'm going to let you refer to the documentation because some of them are a little trickier. For example, I'll do one of them with you here. If you want to do the font style, things like bold, italic, etc., you want to go to the font class to do it. So here's what you could do is you go Java, font, and here's the things available in that font class. Bold, all this other good stuff that you can change it to. And here's where the font class lives, which is probably more important, because if I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to have to import it, java.awt.font. Okay, so let's change one of the styles here. And I can go font dot, why don't we do italics? Okay, so now when we draw it, hopefully it runs as a green size 24 italic message. Okay. Another thing that you can play around with is the font type, and you have to give it a string that it can recognize, and the strings you're able to use are the ones available to you, like use a text editor, like if you had Microsoft Word, for example. If you pull that up, what happens is when you select your font, it actually goes into the computer system and digs up all the available fonts. So if you want to know what's available on your computer, use something like Microsoft Word and it'll show you the list of fonts. But there's some pretty safe ones like Arial, Times New Roman, or Verdana, that kind of stuff. So if you want to change what the font type is, it has to be available on the computer or it'll just ignore it. So I'll go message.set font type, and you can pick your favorite font. So this one will come up Arial and italic instead, so different than the last time again. One thing, and again, there's probably not a time I'm going to ask you to go this far with it, but what I find is that as students get more interested in the programming because you're starting to do cool things with it in games and other stuff, is people want more features. So let me just show you this feature here that you can do. Like, you've only got one thing here, font italic. Well, what if you wanted to make it italic and bold? Then there's an operator in Java. It's called the OR operator. It's actually the binary OR operator, and I'm not going to spend too much time telling you really what they're doing, but basically you can think about it. It's combining the code, the computer code that makes italic and the computer code that makes bold, and it's combining those two codes, and it's doing it in a way that computer scientists call a binary OR. So until you get more advanced in computer science, don't really worry too much about what it's doing. It's basically saying use both of these options now. So it's no longer just italic, it's no longer just bold, it's going to be both. So when I run it, you'll see it's bold and italic here. So you can keep adding your options that you want by using that binary OR. Just keep adding them in and it'll keep combining those codes for you. I can't think of a time it'll be necessary for us, but as I said, if you want extra features, that's one of the ways that they work. Okay, now another thing that might be useful to you is called the JGroup class, and I'll show you how it works with a simple example. We're going to just draw a house. So to do that, I'm just going to draw a simple square with a roof that's just going to be a triangle. So let's do a JRectangle, and I'll call this the house body is a new JRectangle. Whoops, JRectangle. And remember, you need the top left corner. So let's just say, I'll call it house top left. It's a new J point. Let's just go -4, 4. The prettiness of this picture is not so important, just to show you how it works. Of course, when you hand in your assignments, you'll want to make sure that that your picture lines up, makes sense. So just bear with me here as we do this. That's the top left, and then I'm going to go, let's make it 8 and 8. I've had a little more practice at it, so I kind of know where things are going to show up without needing to do that. And that's going to draw me the body, so we might as well draw it right now. Oops, sorry, what did I call it? House body. Okay, so you can always test your program, right? I mean, this will show up here, and there's my house body. So then I'm going to draw the roof on top of it, and to do that I need a triangle. There's no triangle, but that's a polygon. So that's what you could draw it with lines, but it's going to be simple if we just do a J polygon. So I'll call this the roof. Notice I didn't just call it like P or poly. I'm trying to be very specific so that in my program I know what it is. When I see roof, it's the roof of the house. So roof dot add, and the point I'm going to add is I'm going to try and do, it's sort of hard to see with the mouse, but I'm going to do the from here to the top, then back to the bottom. So again, I've had a little more practice at it. I wouldn't expect you to just do it off the top of your head. You probably would want to draw it on your graph paper first. But the first point I'm going to use is the same as the top left point of the house. That's the top left corner. Then if I go to the middle of the house, if its width is 8, it's going to go from -4 to 4. So that's how I know that the middle is going to be at the x-coordinate 0. And how tall do I want the roof to be? Yeah, it's not that important right now, so I'll just say its height is 8. So I don't want it to be like a huge, 20 tall. It would look really out of proportion. So, generally it's, I don't know, let's just say height 2, something like a quarter or it's prettiness. You can, again, either draw it by hand so that you know it's going to look nice, or you can play with changing the numbers around here when you make your pictures. And then I'm going to go to the right. So the right point here is positive 4, 4, which is over there, the top right corner. And then I will tell the window to draw the roof. So here's my house. Oops. After all that talk, it shouldn't be at 2. It should be 2 higher than the top. The top is at 4. It's at 6. So it should look like this. So there's my house, right? Not too exciting, but what I'm going to show you is instead of doing it this way and all this extra stuff, you've got 2 draws. I mean, imagine if I wanted to move this house, I'd have to go house body dot move and 2, 2, and then I'd have to make sure that I remember to move the roof as well, because if I didn't move the roof by the same amount, then they won't show up in the same place on my screen, right? And same thing here, when I drew them, I had to make sure I drew both in order for the house to show up together. What I'm really trying to do is treat these 2 things as one object on the screen. And the way you can do that is through a group. That's all a group does. A group doesn't have any image of its own. It just combines things for you. So I'm going to create a J group, and I'll call this the house. Okay, so I say it's going to be the house, add a shape for me, and it's the roof. House dot add another shape for me, house body. So now instead of dealing with the individual pieces, I can just deal with this group, the house that I've drawn. So if you end up with, like a stick figure, or doing some complicated geometric shapes and things, and you don't want to manage them all individually. Now if I go like this and go house, window dot draw house, I only have to ask it to draw once. There's the house, because the group that's called a house manages all the pieces inside it. If I go window.wait a second, and then I go then I go house.move. Let's say I'm going to move it 3 to the left and 1 up. Then I'll go window.animate the house. Again, waited a second and it moved it for me all in one shot. So I only had to call draw on the house, move on the house, animate on the house. It's all being managed by the group. So, you know, if you're trying to build your own figures or characters in your games or whatever you're doing, it's handy to group them. That way when you're moving or working on them, you're only dealing with one thing. So there is another class that we haven't worked on yet, and it's probably the last one you'll deal with. It's called the timer class. And just show you briefly how it works. You won't really need to use it too much just yet, but so that you know it exists. This creates a timer for 5 seconds. What it'll do is I can then ask it things like start the timer. I can ask it to stop the timer. You can see all the methods in here. I can find out how many seconds are left. I can find out, is this timer finished? Basically, it's a way of using it in games when you're under time limits. So if you want something to happen for a certain period of time, this timer will manage all that for you. You'll be able to check, like, okay, if they have 5 seconds to fire their weapon or whatever it is to do before it's the other player's turn, then you can check this timer here. But we won't use it too much without some more programming techniques. So for now, just know that it's there. You probably won't find it useful until I teach you some new techniques. Okay, so now that you've seen all the classes that sort of available to you, just basic again, there's nothing 3D or anything crazy like that. You're welcome to mess around on your own when you have time, but this will be sufficient for our first course in programming. I'm going to start fresh then, and we're going to talk about this idea of doing more interaction. So you got some advanced things you can do now. Let's try to interact more with the user. So I'm just going to do a quick demo program for you of how to draw a line. So the user is going to click 2 points, and I'll draw a line from what they clicked through. So we should probably start with a message. Let's make a JString. I'll call this line message. And of course I need a JPoint in order to build it, so I'll call it line point new JPoint. Let's move it up to the top left corner of the screen, so like that. And I don't need to be too fancy about you know, what size the message is. Just leave it the way it is. So we'll say go to the left point is where I'm going to draw it, and I'm going to say click 2 points to form a line. Okay. Oops, and I forgot a capital P there. Okay, so window dot draw the line message. It's not a bad idea when you're doing your programs to make sure, you know, as you're moving forward, it's doing what you expect. So rather than type everything, if you're not already doing this, you can try running it here just to make sure that it's proper. And okay, that's about what I expected. So now I'm going to keep going with my program. So now what I'm going to do is get 2 mouse clicks. So JPoint start equals window dot get mouse click. And then I need to get the other one, which is going to be the end of the line. Okay, and then once they've done that, I wanted to draw a line for them. So JLine, user line equals new JLine. And there's 2 ways you can build the line. So far I've shown you how to do it with the X and Y coordinates. You can also just give it 2 points, start and end. So then I'll say window dot draw user line. So now here's my message, and it says click 2 points. So let's click here, and I'll click here, and there's my line. Okay. So you can do lots of interactions. For now, I just need to see that you know how to pull up mouse clicks and get them, and we'll talk about creative ways we can use that later. The other way we want to be able to do this is we want to be able to get keyboard input. So the way you do that is, you can ask the window and say, what do you have for me, window? And there's some key things that you'll see here, like add key, key down, all kinds of different, that we can dig up documentation on. But we also have this get key code method, and that's what we're really going to want to look at first, is get key code. So keys are kind of funny because, for example, right now I'm pushing the right key. Let me just move up. That's the space bar. Right now I'm pushing the right arrow. Okay. How would you do a string with the right arrow? Like this? Well, that doesn't actually produce a right arrow. That's the dash and a greater than sign. So, some keys, the point is, some keys you can't actually print. Like, for example, when you push the control key or the shift key or the alt key, there's, the F9, F10, number lock. There's all kinds of keys that don't actually produce text. So how do you know what's been pushed? Well, that's why we have codes for the different keys. And I'll show you how you get those codes. If you forget, that information is in the graph class, because it's going to be listening for keys. And if you look, get key, it returns an int, and the ints come from the Java class for keys. So let's look it up. So basically this is a class that has a bunch of uses, but for us it's really going to help define all the constants that allow us to know what codes are there. And I'm just realizing that this is actually the wrong, it should be a key event. Sorry, so this is when the event that a person has touched a key has happened. This is what you get as a key event. So for us, that's where the key codes are stored, and this is where you find it. It's AWT event key event. So let's put that in our program so we can start to ask for keys. And if we want to be able to do a key like let's get one from the user, the key codes are actually integers. So I can go window dot get key code. So it's going to throw a key code at me, and later you're going to be able to do things like this and say, let's check if the key, just wait a second, that means it's being slow. There we are. So you can look, the integers that are defined, really we want virtual keys, so they start with VK. So if I move down that, list, so here's the first one, virtual key 0. That means they've pushed the key 0. So these ones, you'd think, well, why not just use a character? But then there's things like, look through all the different, possible ones you could do. You're going to get into some of those ones like virtual key copy. How do you know that they've asked for a copy? Well, there it is. It's one of the virtual keys you can look for. Cut, things like that, which don't normally produce text. The function keys as well, right? So again, when we have some more techniques to learn how to figure these things out, we can say which key was pushed, and we'll get to that later. But for now, this is going to get the code for me, and we're not going to do anything with it because we need some more tools. But what I can do is I can say, make a new JString. So let's go window, how about we do this? We'll go window.erase, and we'll erase the old message from the screen. So it's the line message that I want to erase. And then while it's been wiped off the screen, why don't I just say line message dot set text, set value, and let's change the message now to be push any key to clear the screen. So now I've updated it. I don't have to, it's going to be in the same location, it's just changed this text. So let's go window.draw this updated string. Okay, line message. So now that it's been drawn, just like a mouse click, when you call for a key code, everything else is frozen until that key is pushed. And what I'm going to do is once the key is pushed, I'll know it's happened because I've gotten down here in the code. So we'll say window dot erase, and it'll erase everything. Okay, so let's just run this program so you can see how it works. Click 2 points to form a line. There's my line, and then the message changed. Push any key to clear the screen. So I'll push my space bar, and everything's gone. So more is coming up about key codes and how to use them, but again, we need better techniques to deal with what we, how we process the input. Like for example, we can make a joystick out of the keyboard, knowing which keys are pushed, but again, we're just beginning Java, so we need a few more techniques to get us there.